reporting to you live from Cooper Flagg Hype Train City Town. Big old Cooper Flagg Hype Train leaving the Hype Train station, and I'm gonna say it. I think Cooper Flagg is overrated. If you don't agree with me, you're stupid and you don't know basketball. Come find me, bro. Come and fight me. I'm serious. I have my address posted in my YouTube channel there in my descriptions. Come find me. I'll pick you up at the airport. I'll bring you back to my place and I'll beat you down like we're playing basketball in the 90s. Big old overhyped train for Cooper Flagg. I think Cooper's going to be a great player. I'm not a Cooper Flagg hater, but I do think he is quite overhyped. People love to use the word generational for this player and for that player. Please like and subscribe. Trying to get to 50 subscribers before I pass away. But Wemby just came in the league 2 years ago. Generational talent, Victor Wembanyama. Wemby is definitely a generational talent. Dude is 7'6". He can guard the perimeter and blocks like 5 shots per game. That's a generational talent. When LeBron James came in the NBA, dude 6'8", can run a 4 flat 40 and jump 50 inches in the air. That's a generational talent. Just depends on how people define generational, I suppose. But I don't really see Cooper as being a generational player, to be completely honest. I think he has a lot of good areas to his game. I think he's a really good all-around player. We'll get into his skill set later. But just the term generational, I don't think is really fair to use for Cooper Flagg. But if you show me the last 10 NBA drafts, we have them over here. I'm going to go over the past 20, 25 years or so just to see some of these players that went number one, kind of compare them to Cooper and see how their career went. But moving back, though, if you show me the past 10 years of NBA drafts, we probably use the word generational. 8 of those 10 years, people love to hype up these younger kids coming into the NBA, and we're always so excited to see this new talented player that comes in the league and just hype them up. And sky's the limit when these kids come in the NBA. Just all you can do is just project them to be great, and then they come in and they will be or won't be great, be somewhere in the middle. And that's just for time to tell. But I don't think Cooper's going to be a bust by any means. I don't so much think he's going to be generational either, because, again, how many years does a generational player come around? Is it every 10 years, every 20 years? My mind wants to tell me about every 20, because Jordan came in the 80s. Then 20 years later, we get Tim Duncan, we get Kobe, we get Shaquille O'Neal. So, honestly, those are 3 generational players: Kobe, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan. I don't think any of us would really argue about those players being generational with how talented they are. So maybe every 5 or 10 years a generational player comes along. I honestly don't know. Then LeBron came in 2003. So, I mean, we had Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Shaquille O'Neal, all in the NBA around the same time. So I guess a generational player could come along every 5 years. There might be, again, like I said, 4 in the NBA all at the same time. Again, LeBron, Kobe, Shaq, Tim Duncan. Then we move on. Wemby's our next generational player now. But I mean, from the time LeBron got drafted until Wemby got drafted, I can't really. Got Anthony Edwards in there, but I don't really see Anthony Edwards as generational. Kevin Durant came in, so that's another generational player. And people define generational just differently, but I feel like we kind of throw that word around a little too much with these NBA players and just expect so much from these players. But we'll get to Cooper Flagg's skill set here in a second. Again, I don't think he's going to be a bust by any means. I think he's going to be just fine in the NBA, and I think he can fit in on any NBA team. I'm a Spurs fan. I would love for us to have drafted him, and just with his skill set and the kind of player he is, I don't think there's any team he wouldn't really fit in on. But again, I think generational is a little far. But moving on, over here on the left-hand side for our viewing pleasure, we have the last 25 years of draft picks and the players that went number one here. If the player has that green highlight on them, that means they made at least one All-Star game. If a player has this gold and bronze color on here, like our boy Yao Ming has, that means they were selected for the Hall of Fame. So, first things first, for my criteria, you probably have different criteria of what you're looking for in your number one pick. But if I draft you as a number one pick, I'm kind of looking for a really high peak for 5 years, 7 or 8 years, almost like a Joel Embiid. I don't feel like it was wrong to draft Joel Embiid so high. Did he even go first overall? going through this, Joel Embiid was actually a second or third overall pick. But just using Joel Embiid for an example, if you draft someone that high, Joel had his injury problems and stuff, but to be that good and have such a high peak like Embiid did, I want you to be able to do that. I want you to be maybe like a 10 season straight or so starter where I can count on you to be a starter for my team for 10 years plus, or there's so many different criteria to it. I feel like to be a bust, if you get drafted number one overall and you never make an all-star game. So we're going to get into some of these names here. Kwame Brown is there. We got Andrea Bargnani, Greg Oden. Again, if they don't have green or brown, or that golden shade rather, that means they didn't make an all-star game and they were not Hall of Famers, of course. You have Anthony Bennett down here, Markel Fultz, DeAndre Ayton, Zachary Reese just got drafted last year, so we'll get into him a little later, but I don't think Reese is not a bust by any means. It's way too soon to say any of that about him. But other than Reese, we have DeAndre Ayton, Markel Fultz, Anthony Bennett, Greg Oden, Andrea Bargnani, then Kwame Brown. So, Anthony Bennett, Kwame Brown, some of the biggest busts in NBA history. I think a lot of us would agree on that. But going back to you being a number one overall pick, if I'm an NBA GM and I get the number one overall pick, again, comment below how you define it. There's so many different ways to define if that number one overall pick was deserved. Again, for my criteria, I'm looking for someone who can start for my team for 10 years straight. If you can be a 10-year straight starter for my team or just in the NBA in general, I feel like that does make you worthy of a number one overall pick. Where again, like I was saying, where if you have just a crazy 5-year peak like Joel Embiid did, it's probably longer than 5 years. I think he had at least a 7-year stretch or so where you just have a crazy, insane peak and you're such a good player, you can get a team into championship contention. I know the Sixers didn't even make the finals, but for my argument, I feel like Joel Embiid is just such a talented player and he's just so good, just the injuries was what held him back. So again, I want to see at least 10 years of you being a starter in the NBA if I draft you number one, where I want to see that really high peak where you can have my team in championship contention for at least a little 5-year window or so. But getting into it, 2000, Kenyon Martin went first overall. He did get selected for multiple all-star teams, and I don't think anybody would argue that Kenyon didn't deserve to go number one overall in that draft. Excuse my iTunes here. Yeah, Kenyon had a very good NBA career. He played, I don't know exactly how many seasons. I'll be focusing more on these kind of bust-style players, but Kenyon Martin, definitely a good number one overall pick. Then we get into Kwame Brown here. Kwame Brown's notorious. I think before Anthony Bennett, we were probably calling him the worst number one overall pick in NBA history at that time in 2001. Kwame Brown, he had a 12-year career. He averaged 6 points and 5.5 rebounds per game for his career. So it's honestly just absolutely terrible. He was giving you like 25 and 12 or something like that in college before he came into the NBA. So it's just so hard to draft. I'm not an NBA GM, so I don't have the talent these guys do to pick players and draft players, but the Wizards definitely swung and missed horribly with Kwame Brown. A lot of these guys that we're going to go through here that didn't get selected for the Hall of Fame or selected for any All-Star games, one thing that's in common amongst all these players is just a really low motor, and then people doubting their dedication for the game. I think that's totally fair. If you go number one overall and you're not able to at least make one All-Star game, or again, like I was saying, start for an NBA team for 10 years straight, I don't expect everyone to be as good as Joel Embiid. Injuries aside, I don't expect every number one overall pick to be able to peak that high. But, again, like I'm saying, at least play hard, at least have a good motor. That's the least you can ask for. And Kwame Brown didn't have any. We'll get to some guys later. He didn't have any knick-knack injuries. He didn't come in like Joel Embiid and miss his first season or two with some crazy surgery. Kwame Brown, only he knows, but people would always bash on him. He was kind of the laughingstock of the NBA, to be honest, unfortunately. But again, people just said really low motor, just didn't really care to be in the NBA. It seemed like once he made it in, he kind of retired on day one. Again, Kwame is 6'11". He was very athletic, very good. In college, at least, I think he actually came, he came straight out of high school from Glenn Academy. So That was back when players would still get drafted right out of high school. I feel like it would be harder to evaluate players because everyone's just so much better than the players they're playing with athletically at the high school level. So if you're going to make it into the NBA and you have that physicality and that frame to make the NBA, you're probably just shitting on all these high school kids. So it's harder to evaluate a talent right out of high school than out of college, because once they're in college, they're playing with some better competition around them, and it's kind of easier to evaluate them at that higher level of competition. Where with Kwame and those guys drafted out of high school, it can be harder to kind of evaluate that talent. But with Kwame Brown, either the number one or number two, definitely number three as far as draft busts goes, and only he knows if he was trying as hard as he can or playing as hard as he can. But with Kwame, it's just really unfortunate because I remember watching Kwame Brown, and he just didn't look like he was ever really playing hard out there. He didn't seem to take great care of his body. Just didn't seem like he loved basketball, to be honest with you, and that's a reoccurring thing we're going to see with all of these guys that didn't make the Hall of Fame or didn't make any All-Star games. One thing that's always said about these guys, just across the board, it's always a lack of effort, lack of a motor. Moving on, Yao Ming, our boy made the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame, just 7'6" god out of China. Everyone loves Yao Ming. He was not the first 7'5" or taller guy to enter the NBA, but I remember when I was younger, because I'm 32, when Yao Ming came in the NBA, I was like, man, this guy is just a freak in the best way. This guy is just so tall. Yao Ming was really skilled. He shot over 80% from the free throw line, had a nice mid-range shot, just crazy in the post, of course, with his post moves. People would call him, I guess, a little bit soft. People love to throw the word soft around for anybody that's 7 feet or taller, but he was like 300 pounds, 7'6", just a great overall player. And Yao Ming had a really successful NBA career, so nothing wrong with that. First overall pick. I don't even have to talk about this. LeBron James was the first overall pick in 2003, and everyone knows what LeBron James is. You can put the word generational on him, and I have no problem with that. Dwight Howard here. That's weird. I don't know why it doesn't have. Let me go up real quick. So right here, yeah, that denotes that you made the Hall of Fame. That's weird they don't have LeBron. Okay, I know why. LeBron hasn't retired yet, of course. He hasn't been selected to the Hall of Fame. I just saw him in green because he's made a bunch of All-Star games, of course. But that's why we don't see LeBron in the bronze, because he has to retire still before he makes the Hall of Fame. But we all know he's going to. Moving on, number one pick in 2004 by the Orlando Magic, Dwight Howard. He won either 3 or 4 Defensive Player of the Years. He had a season where he averaged 14 rebounds and like 22 points or something stupid for the season. Multiple seasons where he averaged 3 blocks or more. Don't need to say too much about Dwight Howard. Definitely a deserving number one overall pick. Andrew Bogut. He was definitely a deserving number one overall pick. He wasn't anything insane in the NBA, but he was a really good post presence, really good post defender, very good offensively in the post, really good shot blocker as well. Out of Australia, people would never put the word soft and Andrew Bogut's name in the same sentence. Just a big physical big man down low. I have to go back to the 2005 NBA draft, and I'm sure there's people I can find that should have went over Bogut in hindsight, but Bogut was definitely not a bust. Definitely wasn't generational either, but he was a deserving number one overall pick. Now we get into the more busty players, the players with the big boobies. Andrea Bargnani, I wouldn't so much call him a bust. I know people would call Andrea Bargnani a bust. I've heard it from some people, but he was pretty ahead of his time. He was 7 feet tall. He shot 35% from three for his NBA career. Back in 2006, wasn't completely unheard of, but it was almost unheard of for 7 feet tall guys to be shooting a three ball. There were some people that would do it, but it wasn't like it is today where 7 feet tall guys can just gun up all these threes outside. Back then, people were still saying, oh, you're 7 feet tall, you got to get your ass down there in the post and start shooting some hook shots. Back in my day, would knock your ass on your ass if you came down here in my post. If I can throw an elbow right into your eye, boom, black eyes swollen shut. That's what you get. This is men's basketball. This is how we play in the 90s. Anyway, I got off topic. Bargnani, 7 foot tall, had a wet ass three ball. He averaged 14.3 points and 4.6 rebounds for his NBA career. So dude is a total wussy. This is America. How are you 7 feet tall and not grabbing 12 rebounds per game? That's all you're good for if you're 7 feet tall. Why are you shooting jumpers? That was kind of the mentality back then. If you're 7 feet tall, get in the paint and be physical and do Andrew Bogut type of things. But again, I know people would label Bargnani as a bust. You can see here he has that white background on his name, not green or bronze, which means he didn't make any All-Star games. He definitely did not make it into the Hall of Fame. But Bargnani, I wouldn't personally call him a bust myself. Again, he gave you the 14 points and the 4.6 rebounds. He had a 10-year NBA career. He was pretty much, again, back to my criteria for the beginning of the video. He had that 10-year career. He was solidly a starter for all 10 years of his NBA career. There was never really a question of bringing Bargnani off the bench. He was always starting. And again, just a good three-point shooter, just a decent player. I don't think he was deserving of the #1 overall pick, to be honest. I have to go to 2006 and see what other players were in his draft class, but there's definitely guys in hindsight that should have gone above him. And the main thing people would hate on Bargnani for, same thing with a lot of these European players, people would say he was soft, and he did play a little soft, I will admit that. And then he only averaged 4.6 rebounds per game for his career. So I'll second that. People saying that, I'm not saying 7 foot tall guys shouldn't have any skills, shouldn't be able to shoot or dribble, but you can't be 7 feet tall and only averaging 4.5 rebounds for your career, especially when they wanted to play Bargnani at center. That's what he was drafted, was to be a big man. And being 7 feet tall back in 2006, again, like I said, it was almost unheard of to see these guys shooting threes. But if you are shooting threes, they'll allow that to some point, but you got to be getting more than 4.6 rebounds per game. Again, going back to Kwame Brown, same thing with Bargnani. People would say he has a low motor and just didn't play with a ton of effort out there on the court, and I will second that, to be honest with you. Moving on to Greg Oden. Greg Oden, if y'all remember Greg Oden, we can say he's a bust, I guess. People use the word bust on him, but I can't so much use the word bust when your career was derailed due to a bunch of injuries. That's when you can call them a bust if you want. That's your preference, whatever you want to call them. But I wouldn't so much call players a bust. They get derailed by injuries. I always make sure to mention the injuries that had derailed them. Greg Oden was drafted in 2007. He has that microfracture surgery on his knee before he even comes in the NBA, and he missed his entire first season. I think Embiid missed his entire first 2 seasons, where Greg Oden missed that entire first season with that microfracture surgery on his knee, and then he just never got right, to be honest. Greg Oden, in a perfect world, he would have turned into Joel Embiid. He was 7'1", 7'2", just a big ass dude, really physical, really talented as well. He could shoot jumpers just like Embiid. He had a skill set really similar to Joel Embiid, to be completely honest with you, but just had that microfracture surgery. He had a 7-year career, drafted 2007. He was done by 2014. I think he did go play a little bit overseas, but just talking about his NBA career, 7-year career, again, just derailed due to injuries. He averaged 8 points and 6 rebounds per game. So if you're the #1 pick and you average 8 points and 6 rebounds per game, a lot of people would call you a bust. But just with the injuries and stuff, it's not so much his fault. Again, people would use the same thing they say about all these guys I'm mentioning. Low motor, just didn't play with a lot of effort out there. But to be fair to Greg Oden, it's hard to have a high motor when you just have these knee issues that just keep on going and going, and just kind of derailed his entire career. Talking about Joel Embiid again, because those two guys get compared a lot just with how their careers started off. But, Embiid was able to get his stuff right, at least to enough of a point to have, his crazy 7-year peak that we saw from Joel Embiid, where Greg Oden, I'm not in the man's body. I can't say, oh, you just got to be tough or you got to play through these injuries and you could be just like Joel Embiid. I mean, only Greg Oden knows his body. Maybe he had a low motor and wasn't dedicated to the game of basketball, and maybe he had just bad knee issues, and that was more the reason why we didn't see what we wanted to see from Greg Oden, or maybe it was a little bit of both, to be honest. But when guys have the injuries, I give them a pass to some point when they have the injuries. But again, we have Kwame Brown, Bargnani, Greg Oden. Those are the three players since 2000 that didn't make any All-Star games. And if you don't make any All-Star games, you don't make the Hall of Fame either. I don't think that's ever happened, a player to make the Hall of Fame with no All-Star games, unless they have some crazy European overseas career. Moving on though, 2008, Derrick Rose. I don't need to talk about Derrick Rose. Number one overall pick, definitely deserved to be the number one overall pick. Blake Griffin, same thing, definitely a deserving number one overall pick. Both these guys made multiple All-Star games. Same thing with John Wall. John Wall maybe didn't so much hype, so much hype. People are probably calling John Wall generational when he came out of college as well, and definitely just a deserving number one overall pick. I think John Wall had at least 120 and 10 season where he's 20 points and 10 assists. He was just a freaking blur with the ball out there. He was a lefty as well, and John Wall was just so fun to watch when he was healthy, and he deserved to go number one overall. Kyrie Irving definitely deserved to be number one overall, one of the most skilled players we've ever seen in NBA history. Anthony Davis, same thing, one of the best defenders we've ever seen in NBA history. He did have his injury issues as well, and it's always knick-knack injuries with Anthony Davis. When you see guys like Greg Oden and these guys that come in injured, because Anthony Davis came in with injuries as well, but some guys are able to get their body right and have a fruitful career like Anthony Davis did. Then some guys like Greg Oden just aren't able to get back healthy, and people want to say, oh, it's just your mindset. You just got to get your mind right. And if you play hard, you can play through a million injuries like Kobe and you'll be just fine. But, I know there's guys where your body just betrays you. No matter how hard you want to play or how tough you are, if you have a bad knee or just these injury issues, some guys eventually want to, think about later on in their life and not completely trash their knees because they have to walk on those for the rest of their life. Anthony Bennett, it's either him or Kwame Brown that are going to go as the number one draft bust of all time. And Anthony Bennett, let's see here. What do I have for Anthony Bennett? So he had a four-season career in the NBA. Greg Oden, real quick as well. He averaged 8 points and 6 rebounds. So, he had the injuries. Call him a bust if you want to, but always have to preface the injury concerns whenever that happens. But Anthony Bennett got drafted to Cleveland Cavaliers. This was... When did LeBron leave? Yeah, LeBron was still gone because he left 11, 12, 13, 14 was LeBron was gone. So they got Anthony Bennett in 2013. LeBron's probably thinking, hey, we got a number one overall pick. We have Kyrie Irving over there. He's just killing it. That's crazy. They got those 3 number one overall picks within a 4-year span. So who says tanking doesn't work? Yeah, Anthony Bennett, he had a 4-season career. He averaged 4.4 points per game. I just don't know. Again, I'm not a GM. I don't know how to evaluate talent. I like to think I do know a little bit about how to evaluate talent, but in college, Anthony Bennett was 16 points, 8 rebounds. He shot 37.5% from 3, so it's just crazy how bad he busted. It's crazy how his 3-ball didn't translate at all. He wasn't able to turn himself into at least a knockdown 3-point shooter or just some kind of contributor in the NBA. He didn't come with injuries. He didn't have any lingering, what's the word I'm looking for? Chronic is the word I'm looking for. Any chronic injuries where it just keeps on occurring again and again. Anthony Bennett, he was just a freaking bust, dude. I don't know if his mindset just wasn't there, and maybe he's dealing with things outside of basketball that just affected him mentally, but I don't know. Either the Cavs just don't know how to evaluate talent, which I don't think is true because we go on to the next year. They drafted Andrew Wiggins, number 1 overall, and Andrew Wiggins definitely deserved to be the number 1 overall pick, and he's had a really great NBA career. Just been a great defender and just an awesome 6'8" versatile player that is pretty much perfect for today's NBA. But yeah, Bennett just freaking busted, dude. I don't know what to say about it. It's crazy to see him shooting 38% from 3 in college and then not even be able to turn yourself into at least a knockdown shooter in the NBA. So, I don't know the man off the court, but And like I said about all these players that didn't make any All-Star games, a criticism people always have of them, low motor, just not a high work ethic, and I heard a lot of those things be said about Anthony Bennett, whether they're true or false. Again, Wiggins in 2014, Carl Anthony Towns in 2015, definitely deserving number one overall pick. Ben Simmons in 2016. A lot of people like to call Ben Simmons a bust. I wouldn't call him a bust so much. I mean, he had a season he was averaging 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. You'll take that all day. I feel like he was a deserving number one overall pick when he was drafted. It's just that he starts having his mental issues. Nowadays he's scared to shoot a jump shot. He just didn't develop the way the Sixers were hoping he would develop, of course, needless to say. But when Ben Simmons first came in, he still had his confidence and he was healthy. He has the back issues as well, so that's another thing that he has to deal with. But when he came in, he was healthy. I think it was his second or third season. He was like 16, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, versatile defender. Ben Simmons is a very good NBA player. Just started having those mental hurdles and just wasn't able to get himself, to make himself a very good NBA player like he had the potential of being. But Ben Simmons is the only guy that made an All-Star game that people would call a bust. I personally wouldn't call Ben Simmons a bust. This next guy, Markelle Fultz, I would definitely call him a bust. Comparing Markelle Fultz next to Ben Simmons, that's when I would say, look at the guy they got next year. You can't call Ben Simmons a bust after seeing them draft Markelle Fultz for the next season, but Markelle Fultz, 10 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists for his NBA career. He averaged 26.6 rebounds and 6 assists in college. So people see that and, 26.6 rebounds, 6 assists. You feel like that's going to translate. He's going to come into the NBA and be just a good, solid NBA shooter. But just like Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz had an insane hitch on his jumper, just never developed his jump shot. And he had that shoulder problem. Thoracic outlet syndrome is what it's called, apparently. It sounds like a crazy made up word. Who am I to say? But he had that lingering shoulder issue. But there's a lot of guys that have, knee problems, shoulder problems. Joel Embiid had all of his injury problems and still was able to have a solid NBA career. So Markelle Fultz, just a bust. Another one of the biggest busts in NBA history, to be honest with you. A lot of people would say that. And I did mention his shoulder injury, so I have to preface it with the shoulder injury, but just was not what anybody expected him to be. DeAndre Ayton, low motor, doesn't really care about the game of basketball. I'll say that. I can't confirm that just by watching him myself. That's how I feel about DeAndre Ayton. 16 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 1 block for his NBA career from 2018 to now, and that's him not even trying very hard. At least just looking at him mentally, it doesn't look like he's trying as hard as he could be. But I wouldn't label DeAndre Ayton a bust. That's probably the one guy so far that I wouldn't label as a bust out of all these guys that didn't make any All-Star games. But I don't see his motor all of a sudden, him just becoming a very high motor guy out of nowhere all of a sudden. I feel like he just kind of is the player he is. Really, really talented player. Just depends on if he wanted to clock in and really work hard that day. Zion Williamson, deserving number one overall pick, he's just like DeAndre Ayton. Same work ethic, same mental fortitude for the game. It's just that Zion's just a freaking freak. And Zion, he's 26 points per game, 27 points per game on like 60% shooting when he's healthy. So I don't really see Zion Williamson's mindset changing either. I don't see him becoming some nutrition freak and being on the cover of Men's Health like Luka Doncic was. I feel like his mindset kind of is his mindset, and just a matter of him staying healthy. For him to stay healthy with his knees, because it's usually knee problems and foot problems, it would be trying to keep his weight down. But he's just such a twitchy, explosive athlete. Even Zion in peak shape is like 260, 270 pounds, so it's just hard to stay healthy when you're that kind of athlete. Anthony Edwards is a god on basketball shoes. Cade Cunningham is a freaking animal. Paulo Banchero, Victor Wembanyama, all these guys are definitely deserving number one overall picks. Zachary Reese-Archet. That's the last guy that we see here that has no green or bronze behind their name, so no All-Star games, no Hall of Fame appearances. Zachary Reese-Archet gave you 13 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1 assist, playing next to Trae Young in Atlanta last season. I don't know if he's a deserving #1 overall pick or not, to be honest. I wasn't mad about Reese-Archet being picked #1 overall, and it's just a matter of time to see how that man develops over time. Now we have Cooper Flagg coming in here at the 2025 pick as the first overall pick coming into this season. Again, only Kwame Brown, Bargnani, Greg Oden, Anthony Bennett, Markelle Fultz, DeAndre Ayton, and Reese-Archet. Those are the only guys since 2020 that didn't make an all-star game. Reese-Archet is still young. He has a chance to do that. DeAndre Ayton, I guess you could say the same thing. I don't really see him making an all-star game in his career. But then we come to Cooper Flagg. This video wasn't so much about Cooper Flagg and talking all about Cooper Flagg as a prospect, just to go through these guys the past 20 years. They love to put the word generational on a lot of guys, which again, I don't think Cooper Flagg is a generational player. Not to hate on the man, but I feel like Cooper Flagg will make multiple all-star games in his career. I feel like worst case scenario for Cooper Flagg is that he's a versatile defender that can defend 1 through 5. He'll be able to shoot, rebound, play make at a decent level, play high caliber defense. Like, I feel like that's the worst case scenario for Cooper Flagg, is you having just an above average defender, and you can just plug him in on any NBA team. He'll have really high trade value if Dallas ever wanted to do that. He's already developed just to be, from day one, just to be a really good versatile defender and be able to be a good cutter, make the backdoor cuts, be a really good screen setter. I see him being really good on the pick and pop, pick and roll, playing off ball. Again, there's really no boxes that Cooper Flagg doesn't check off. It's just that there's not one box where I check it off and say he's elite at this thing. He's not an elite shooter, elite rebounder, playmaker, passer, whatever it is. He's not an elite shot blocker, elite at getting steals or anything like that. I don't think he's an elite post defender, an elite perimeter defender. He's just very good at everything. Very good passer, shooter, post defense, perimeter defense. Very good connector on offense, connector on defense. He's just very good at pretty much everything. And as long as he works hard and keeps developing, I see him turning into at least a multiple time all-star. But like I said to start the video, I don't really see Cooper Flagg as a generational talent. We love to throw the word generational around, but just going through this list, Wembanyama's generational. Then we just go down. I mean, LeBron James is generational, and that's the last two #1 overall picks that have been generational over the past 20 years, to be honest, in my opinion, the past 25 years. Anthony Edwards, you can say whether or not he's generational. I wouldn't so much consider Anthony Edwards a generational player, but he is very, very good. When I hear the term generational, I'm thinking of LeBron James, I'm thinking of Wembanyama, just an absolute freak where it's like, man, I've never seen anything like that before. But again, I feel like Cooper Flagg is going to be a very good NBA player. Just do everything at a good to very good level, and then as he keeps developing, maybe he becomes great at shooting or great at playmaking or great at some skill on the offensive end. Again, I don't think he's great at any one thing offensively. If I say he's great at anything coming in, I would say he's just great at defense, just overall defensively. I see him being a great defender, and we have to wait for him to get into the league before we can confirm that and see him against this NBA talent. But there's nothing I see with Cooper Flagg that makes me think he's going to be a bust or not be a very good player at the NBA level. It's just going to be seeing how he looks against these NBA caliber guys, seeing how he looks next to Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving once Kyrie comes back, and just seeing what he looks like next to these high level defensive big men, because he has Gafford, Lively, AD, and I think those guys are really going to complement his skill set and just help him shine at the NBA level. But I think generational is just a bit of a stretch. But please like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 50 subscribers before I pass away. Please comment below what you think about Cooper Flagg and how he's going to look, and we'll see y'all next time.